Hey, what's going on, friends and family? My name is Skylent. If I sound a little bit better today, that's because I am. Finally, over COVID, just got some congestion, but yeah, no, I'm happy to be me again. Actually, I can't wait to go out and see the lakes and feed the duckies and, all that stuff. Enjoy the world, and oh my god, spring, it's happening. The world is opening up a little bit. People are getting vaccines. Oh man, I'm just optimistic and I'm feeling pretty good. So today's video, I kind of did want to talk about something I'm optimistic about, that I'm hungry for and looking for. We're still kind of stuck inside a little bit, and it's still fun to escape. So yeah, MMOs, one of those things. And one thing that I'm doing a lot of, and that I've spent way too much time these past couple weeks being sick doing, is watching a lot of anime. I mean, a lot. And this season is so thick. If you guys just want a quick rundown of my favorite animes, Mushoku Tensei, so Jobless Reincarnation, is amazing. Touchy subject matter, but I actually really appreciate it. Beastars, but I guess you gotta wait for it on Netflix. And I've been watching like retro anime, like Outlaw Star. Finished that. I'm running through really too many isekais, and oh my god, Attack on Titan is and then ReZero, and then everything. Even Black Clover is free. Oh my god, just everything, right? So, anyways, enough gushing of that. Anime is cool. Playing MMOs and exploring and adventuring in virtual worlds is pretty cool, because it's kind of hard to do that in real life right now. And it's also a great way to socialize in terms of like anime, talking about anime, making friends with people. Join my Discord, by the way, we can do that. And then also playing games literally with people inside of MMOs and going on these epic quests. But why is it that historically, and then in the foreseeable future, we haven't had or will have anime MMO, So what is the reason for that? Do I have any insights? And then also, what do I want from an anime MMO? And why do I specifically want anime MMO? Other than that, like, I guess I'm a weeb and I'm a nerd, and that's just kind of my shit, right? So, okay, here it is. Not gonna cut you guys for too long. Why don't we have more anime MMO? So far, we've had like the hidden gem Mabinogi, and I do not consider games like Genshin Impact or Dragon Nest anime MMO because they're not MMO. So the closest things that maybe we have are Korean games, actually. So you could say like Blade and Soul. We actually do have Final Fantasy XIV, but if you actually look at all these games that come from especially South Korea and Japan, which I am a little bit lumping that art style together, but we're going to talk about that later. You'll notice that like those games don't actually translate very well to the West. So here's the history. If you look at both of those countries and their game development, they tend to make like action RPGs or sport titles like fighting games, something like that. And they focus on these unique interactions that's kind of special to their culture and really what their own people actually want to purchase. It's very famous and known that Japan is very Japanese. And that means that, yeah, mostly people who live in Japan are historic, like their lineage is Japanese. They're kind of more of like an isolated country in a lot of ways. Seemingly like the rest of the world loves them, but actually like they kind of make products and stuff for Japan. That definitely goes heavy with their video games and the culture surrounding that. So actually Japan, being the way it's kind of the infrastructure that it's built on, same thing actually with South Korea, is that they kind of make games with low latency in mind, low ping in mind, actually. So they're fighting games and stuff like that. Also, there's an arcade and, I guess, game cafe culture where you can go and play with their, strong PCs inside of their cafes. Those kind of games are built in a specific way that actually don't work that well in the West. So just in terms of why don't we get more MMOs from the East, it's because their MMOs kind of don't work as MMOs. In terms of like big, lots of players connecting from large, long distances away, lots of ping and stuff like that. That's why their MMOs, such as Black Desert Online, even though I know that's not Japanese, it's South Korean, but it works and plays in a certain way that's more like an action RPG, like Dungeon Fighter Online, versus something like EverQuest or World of Warcraft, which is designed in such a way so that it works over vast distances and pings and lag, and that makes sense. It's an MMO, that's gonna happen. So if you ever tried to play BDO or Blade and Soul in the West, you know that you probably can't compete, likely, unless you have fiber internet, which I do, so I can, and I actually live in one of the, central servers. Still, most people can't, and it sucks. So that's just how they're kind of designed. They have a very hyper-focused demographic that they aim for, and that's actually true a lot for anime. So let's go talk about now the anime portion. Why don't we have more anime from the East, especially Japan? So anime, to a lot of people, the definition is actually like anime is made by Japanese people for Japanese people. It is a very particular niche, and it's straight up like, that's why we call it people weebs, if you like it. It's a very particular thing that is very cultural. So that has actually exploded though and become worldly, and I love that, and this is happening for a lot of other things. Many cartoons and comics and movies in general. Bollywood is exploding. Awesome. I'm so happy for that. So no racism or culturalism or speciesisms or anything coming from me whatsoever. I love the whole fucking world, okay? But the thing is that it is a very particular art style. So for one, that's just niche. It's hyper specific, and that demographic is kind of just now being explored. Here's my thing, is it needs to be more popular, it needs to be explored. Anime MMO is something that is extremely searched and yet underserved. So the next big games that really focus on that art style and that demographic, they will be very popular, which I am certain League of Legends is going to more lean in that direction. And if you've played the MMO of League of Legends. So if you played the card game, you played the MOBA, auto chess, and even their mobile game, you know that they've definitely more over the years is more and more animated, literally creating animes. So yeah, that's a thing. It's something that's going to blow up and it's going to be really cool. But so far, we have not really had that art style inside of MMOs. We've had Mabinogi, Final Fantasy XIV, it's kind of, like Blade and Soul if you want to go with South Korea. But Japan, just historically, because they are so Japanese and because they haven't historically made MMOs, they kind of just don't. They would probably more rather make mobile games, action RPGs, fighting games, stuff like that. And even then, historically, a big thing with fighting games is their online has sucked. Because again, they hyper-focus on the infrastructure, though I don't want to ramble on that again because we've already talked about it. But basically, just because they just haven't done it a lot, Japan's very traditional. So I know it's kind of funny because looking out from the rest of the world, they're very untraditional, they're very strange and weird, and that's why they're so fun and colorful. But actually, in terms of the corporate culture of Japan and how they create anime or video games, there actually is a tremendous amount of structure and to a point of toxicity, actually. If you know what it's like to be a mangaka or an animator or somebody who works in game development or an office space inside of Japan, not good. It is not happy times. They get paid very little, they work way too much. Very tragic. But see, here's the thing. MMOs, more than any other genre on the planet, require basically a corporate structure. It needs a lot of people to work, to build, to make the art, and all the bullshit, right? It takes a lot to make a true, proper, massively multiplayer online game, especially one that has such a unique and distinct art style, and of course it's going to have a completely unique world because it's fucking anime. So it would require a corporate, entity, which is why Final Fantasy XIV feels very weird. Even though it's very much an emulation of Western MMOs, it really is more an emulation of all of the non-MMO portions of those games. They kind of just picked and chose, and it's actually not a very massive game. Same thing with Blade and Soul, and you could even say Black Desert sometimes feels like a single-player game. So it's like these games, they just make it massive enough, or they have enough features, so it's like, yeah, it's an MMO. But really, it's more like, oh, this is a JRPG. Oh, this is an action RPG. Oh, like Blade and Soul. Oh, that's a fighting game, So that's kind of where they're coming from, where it's just like they're very not used to making MMOs, which is so weird because, especially right now with so many isekais, there are so many anime, webtoons, light novels, all the bullshit from the East that is directly inspired from Western MMO game design. And it blows my mind that we don't actually have a Western-style proper MMO coming out of Japan with an anime art style. But, okay, actually, let's just go ahead and kind of bridge here, talking about, would it even be good, Final Fantasy XIV is a good game, but is it a good MMO, right? It's not revered to, classic World of Warcraft. It doesn't have giant, epic, huge fights with hundreds of players like Guild Wars 2. It doesn't have hundreds versus hundreds PvP like PlanetSide 2. It just isn't as MMO as something like Albion Online or RuneScape. It just isn't. But it's still a good game. It's just an MMO. No. But could they do it? Is it possible? Well, I think honestly, almost using all of these manga and such as game design documents, some people will be like, oh, Sword Art Online could never work. It could if they wanted to. I'm not saying full virtual reality and stuff like that, but like a tower level based style, you know, MMO where everyone's trying to climb to the top is actually very much a parallel of a Western theme park design. Final Fantasy XIV in many ways does that. In fact, if you do raids and stuff, there's normally tiers of raids. Like, okay, this is the first tier, you know, next season we're gonna get another tier, stuff like that. It's tiers, there's literal levels, you know, an actual tower-based system, you know, that focuses on some people are life skilling focused, some people are the, you know, the conquerors or the dungeon divers. It's entirely possible. You know, the sky is the limit, and we don't need another World of Warcraft clone to make that possible. Even though I'm advocating for a Western style MMO, what I'm saying is just a game that focuses on those MMO principles, such as Ultima or EverQuest, stuff like that, the historical Western, you know, MMOs. So it's possible, it's just not likely that we would get it. But is it likely that it would be good? I think that now with COVID that we've learned that, okay, like with fighting games like Guilty Gear, stuff like that, we're starting to see the netcode becoming better, you know, because people are finally actually saying, hey, netcode fucking matters, and especially in a lot of MMOs, people are going to the Western ones, such as like Elder Scrolls Online, where it's like, yeah, it's pretty functional here, it really works out, especially because it can be played on consoles and stuff like that, pretty cool. But it does seem that Japan is still lagging, especially companies like Nintendo, oh my god, a ton of fighting games like Street Fighter going backwards and stuff like that. Like, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a near future thing, but I do think that in time, yeah, no, they're going in that direction. It is not an impossibility, especially because it's just a fact. People really want anime MMOs. Whether it's a full MMO or not, people want anime online games. We see that with Genshin Impact being way too freaking popular, and that's just a little bit co-op, you know? So, dude, a free-to-play anime MMO, and it was like an actual proper AAA experience, would... it would be big. Okay, could you imagine a Genshin MMO? It would be so big. But yeah, I mean, I think the other problem would be maybe the art style. So what style would they actually go with? And I think there actually has been a fine-tuning of really what people like. And that's going to be mostly this sort of Breath of the Wild style kind of anime inspiration where it almost blends like Japanese animation with Western cartoon. And it kind of makes this really awesome, cel-shady, very clean art style. And that's really where I want to segue into why I personally want an anime MMO. So I do think that, you know, games like Genshin Impact is really the right direction. Blue Protocol, not quite, actually. Games like Dragonist definitely went in the wrong direction, sadly, with its weird, low-poly chibi thing. So there's ways it could go wrong, but I think that now that people see the success of Final Fantasy XIV, and especially Genshin Impact, there's probably somewhere in between that people really, really like, where it's high fidelity, it's beautiful, really, you know, engrossing animations, but it's overall clean. Final Fantasy XIV needs to work more on that clean aspect, but people do like the, you know, just, it looks anime as fuck, and it looks cool, right? You want big, colorful gameplay, you don't want it to be muddy and brown, and that's why I'm making this video, is because so many MMO, especially Western MMO, are just brown and kind of red and maybe shitty green, and it's just like blah, because I think they're trying to be realistic and down to earth, but it just looks like dirt, and no, I'm not really having it. Also, with the fidelity, it's just kind of too much noise and complicated. Even games that are a little bit more cartoon like Guild Wars 2, it's a little too much. So going a little bit deeper, like games like WildStar or obviously World of Warcraft, they're cleaner, they pop more. It's actually more immersive because it's easier on the eyes. It's easier to be immersed when you're not bombarded by random effects and bullshit, basically, and really scratchy like textures, which Final Fantasy XIV kind of does a little bit. But in time, I think we have nailed down, you know, Breath of the Wild, Genshin Impact style. That's really where people kind of want the game. Maybe not so much chibi, but, you know, somewhere in between Final Fantasy XIV and Genshin Impact is the sweet spot. Very likely the next big MMO. I think probably League of Legends is going to kind of go with that aspect. So anyways, that is why I'm making the video, though, is I want an anime MMO, and I think a lot of you guys want it for a similar reason, but maybe you haven't quite pulled it out of your subconscious. But I think it's because we want a really clean art style, and that's pretty much it. So whenever I'm watching, like, oh my god, Jobless Reincarnation, where every little animation is just so subtle and kind of colorful and just clear, you know? Like, there's so much detail in some of these scenes, and yet my eyeballs pick it all up. I feel immersed, and I'm enjoying myself much more than some of the darker episodes of like Game of Thrones or something like that. Like sometimes it's just noise, right? So I think that it definitely carries over to games like MMOs or esport games. You know, some people don't play Smite because it's a little noisy, but League of Legends is a kind of almost perfect art style. It's clean, it's cartoon, it's very readable, and even though it's a very arcade top-down, esport title, it's actually immersive and it can feel visceral and, combative, like a fighting game almost, even though it is, it's totally a game. MMOs would be rewarded so much for going with a more clean art style, a more minimalistic UI, more just clean fireballs and special effects, so that it doesn't. It really can bother people. It can give you motion sickness almost, or the opposite actually, where like sometimes I play games and I'm kind of just staring at the UI. This happens so much in Final Fantasy XIV, where I'm kind of like my eyes glaze over. But when I'm playing Genshin Impact or Breath of the Wild, I am in the game and it feels amazing. And it's just because it's a clean art style. It's more readable, and it really is just that simple. And I think it would become more immersive despite being more cartoon. I think there's a reason why World of Warcraft has been so abundantly successful. And yet at the same time, I do think there's a reason why Final Fantasy XIV has been so successful. And I think if we can merge these two philosophies, you do end up getting a very cartoon and colorful Japanese styled MMO that would do very, very well. So, looking forward to the future. Yeah, I want to play like games like Blue Protocol and stuff like that, but frankly, a lot of these games, again, that we see up and coming are either not actual MMOs, or they are just barely an MMO and more inspired by like action RPGs or a fighting game or, something like that. It's not quite a full living, breathing world, but I think it's entirely possible in the art style of anime or that Japanese or really Eastern, because I do want to lump in South Korean art in there too. This sort of flavorful but clean and readable art style, I think would just, God, it would be such a boon for the MMO genre. It would get people into the game space, into the genre, more excited about all these different games, and then of course that one game would probably be freaking huge. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, but that's pretty much it. Just to reiterate, yeah, Japan is very Japanese. They don't normally do online games like that, or do online games really that good at all, but their fiction has a ton of inspiration for it, so there might be some potential, and to me, that potential really is everything that it would take to get me into the MMO genre again, which is just a really fucking clean, readable, and fantastic world to actually play in. I want to be immersed, and I genuinely think it's not going in like this Unreal Engine, like kind of gritty, dark brown, muddy look that's a bunch of games are doing. I think, no, we need to go in the opposite. Make me a Breath of the Wild MMO, and I am fucking there. Okay, so your turn, Keyboard Warriors, in the comments below. Much love, like, subscribe, look at Patreon, if you want to support a content creator. I don't know. This was a rant, but hopefully I covered everything that I possibly could with some insight that maybe you didn't know. I don't know. Edutainment? Possibly. It was a gameplay commentary, guys. Whatever. Much love. I'll see you in the next one.